podcast with our host, Sherry Price Clark of Storehouse Media. Sherry, how are you? And we have a great guest today.
Hi, Neil. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. And yes, we do have a unique guest, I would say. He is both a stand-up comedian and a rabbi. So with those two categories, he kind of brings a uniqueness to the stand-up comedy routines, and that his is clean. You do clean comedy, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And
Yeah,
when I'm on stage,
yeah, okay, all right. And that's kind of an interesting thing. I love watching comedy shows, and I do like them when they're clean. I like them so much better when
right.
all that other stuff stays out. But anyway, he's performed along some of the biggest names in comedy. So his name is Bob Alper. Welcome, Bob. How are you?
Good. Nice to be there, wherever you are, in South Carolina. Nice.
Yeah, Ohio. We're just a little bit of here and there and
Yeah,
everywhere. And
exactly.
All right.
yeah, Bob, you've done some really interesting things, and you've actually gotten some media attention when you've been featured, including the Tamron Hall Show, Good Morning America, CNN, and the Today Show. It's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. So you got that rabbi thing going on. You got the stand-up comedian. Tell us about that journey going either or
Yeah.
between the two.
First of all, it was always funny. I remember when I was 3 years old, I made a joke. The word we used to use for our rear end was tutu in our family. And I absolutely remember this. The babysitter came. She said, "Does anyone want to go to the park?" One kid said, "I want to go." And my sister said, "I want to go too." And I can remember saying, "I want to go too." And, people may not think that's so funny, but I remember thinking I am one hysterical toddler. So I always use jokes. And in my congregational life, I spent 14 years serving large congregations, always use jokes and funny stories in my sermons, my teaching. That's part of me. And it still is a part of me.
No
That
doubt.
that's that that's awesome. But you don't just stop at your comedy and the rabbi. You do writing and music and all of that. How did that all happen?
The writing, you said it's a little hard to hear you.
Yes, the writing. You've got writing, and you do CDs and all of
Right.
that. You're
Well,
just
the
such
CDs
a
are the
talented guy.
comedy CDs. Um, the writing, my wife always encouraged me. I've always been a good writer. And as a comedian, you get a lot of applause and laughter. So I looked at my life. I said, "What's missing?" Well, what was missing was rejection. So I decided to try and write a book. And if you want to write a book, you get a lot of rejection. So, so I wrote some sample chapters. Then I got rejected by agents. And then I got an agent. And then she tried to market the book, and she got a lot of rejections. But then she got accepted. So my my first book is called Life Doesn't Get Any Better Than This: The Holiness of Little Daily Dramas. It's a combination of 44 separate chapters, short chapters, all true stories. And I don't know if you know the name Bishop Fulton J. Sheen.
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
Bishop, for listeners who don't know, he was a radio TV priest back in the 50s and 60s, and they're now considering elevating him to sainthood in the Catholic Church. He was a wonderful guy, and he was very popular among people of all faiths. So a woman named Joan Golan was his editor, and then she started working for Liguori Publications, the largest Catholic publisher. And Joan felt that what I wrote was similar to Bishop Fulton Sheen's messages. In other words, from a clergy person and appropriate to people of all faiths. So she accepted me, and Joan was my editor. And the book came out, and it sold 25,000 copies. It did very well. I wrote another book called Thanks, I Needed That, and Other Stories of the Spirit. And I love writing. My wife is my critic and wonderful at it. But my writing is inspirational, some humor in some of the stories, but most of the stories are very poignant, and some of them actually bring people to tears. Um, One of the nicest things that happened to me was I got an email from a Superior Court judge in Austin who said he has my book, and he has some really tough cases. And when he's really upset, he goes into his study and he reads a chapter from my book.
Huh.
I kind of like that.
Oh, that's so
So
nice.
talk about that book in a way that how you brought humor to it and storytelling at the same time. That's what you are as a comedian, but as a writer, you had to kind of put that same hat on.
Sure. Well, one chapter comes to mind. I talk about an elderly person who was having a rough day, and she was a woman who knew my parents. I met her after a speech I gave in Bennington, Vermont, and she felt she has a rabbi at hand. She could talk to me about something that was really upsetting her, and what she told me was that she was in a liquor store buying her monthly fifth of vodka when she lost a money clip that had been given to her son at his bar mitzvah 50 years earlier. And she looked at me, she said, I guess God is telling me no more booze. And I looked at her and I said, it's possible, but maybe what God is saying to you is, Selma, get a wallet. So, so she laughed and I laughed. And the story goes on to talk about how humor can really be very helpful for people dealing with crises, whether it's an actual crisis or just aging, which is a crisis in itself, and sadness that attends aging. And I explain in another part of the book one of the highest, I think the highest point of my entire career as a stand-up took place after a show when a woman who I knew was dying of cancer came up to me, and she said, she said, for an hour and a half, I forgot I was sick. So that's what humor does.
No, it definitely does. And it's important because people need to have a distraction that's a positive distraction, Rabbi, not a negative distraction, because that'll bring you even down even further in the dumps.
Right.
Well, I know when I'm down, if somebody says something funny, I don't know, it just kind of changes the whole atmosphere
Yep.
and it just kind of lifts you up. And what they say, it's the best medicine. Humor's the best medicine. It's great. And I love being around funny people. I do. I don't know who doesn't. I
Yeah.
mean, don't you love it? I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah,
I love,
absolutely.
well,
Yeah.
people love to laugh.
Well,
Yeah,
You know,
and it's funny in comedy. You watch any comedy show or certain things, and you're like, okay, now I'm feeling better.
yeah.
That's what you do.
And Maya Angelou has a great line that sort of has inspired me and guided me. She says that people forget what you say and they forget what you do, but they never forget how you make them feel.
Yep.
So I can give sermons on end, and I'm a good preacher, and I can help people, and I hope I do that. But my comedy is making people feel good. And an example of that is I have a very funny driver's license. I don't know if I can put it up on the screen here.
how is that? I've never heard of a funny driver's license.
Oh yeah. So here, this is my license.
Yeah.
Oh, so have you ever been pulled over and the police look at that and they're like, they kind of jump back in shock?
You know, at lunch I ran into one of our local policemen, and I showed him the license. He said, "If I ever saw that, I wouldn't give you a ticket." So this just happened about an hour ago. But no, I've never been pulled over. But I've gone through TSA. 2 days ago, I went through TSA. And if there's no one behind me, if there's time, I'll say to the TSA person, I'm going to show you my license, but you're going to look at 1,000 licenses today. But when you get home, you're going to tell your family about this. He said, "What do you mean, sir?" And I showed him my license, and he melted. He laughed. He said, "Oh, I thank you. When you get to the X-ray machine, Eddie and Susan are there. Show them your driver's license." And the TSA will have a little party surrounding my license. So, so I used this license. I was checking into a hotel one night, and the young desk clerk looked pretty sad, that dour expression. And I showed him my license, and he smiled a little bit, and he looked at me and he said, "I've had a really rough day. Thanks, I needed that." And it feels so good. And
Yeah.
the name of my second book is Thanks, I Needed That, and Other Stories of the Spirit. And one of the chapters talks about this encounter with the desk clerk and what a funny driver's license does. And I use this license every single day. I was in a convenience store buying a cup of coffee, and these are people in not terrific jobs
Right.
and doing their best and doing their best for their families. It's hard. It's a hard life. And after I say before I pay, I say I want to show my driver's license. And she said, "Sir, I don't need to look at your driver." I said, "No, I want to show you my license." So I showed her my license, and she laughed. And she called her associates over, and the three of them looked at the license and laughed. And one of them said, "They let you do that?" And so I showed them. This is what it says in the back. I show everyone that too.
Yes,
So,
they
Oh.
let me do that.
so, so, so I showed them the light, and they all laughed. And then I said, "Okay, how much is the coffee?" She said, "Oh, we're not charging you for coffee." So, so there are perks. And that's not why I do it, but I love doing that. We were down in Houston last weekend, and I was driving out of the rental car lot, and I showed the woman my license. She's got, again, not a terrific job. Often the people in that booth are from Pakistan, middle-aged men with two master's degrees in engineering, but this is what they have to do to sustain their lives until they get settled. And sadly, and I show my driver's license, and the big smile comes and the laugh comes, and the guy says, let me show you. Let me show it to my friend in the next booth, and they have a little party. And I get to do this every day, and I love it. So back to Maya Angelou, my rabbinate. There are all kinds of ways of being a rabbi. Congregational life, I've done that. Organizational life, academic life, scholarship. My rabbinate is making people laugh, and that's my ministry. That's my rabbinate. And any
Uh-huh.
chance I get to make people laugh, I do.
And I think that you found another way of a ministry because not just you're as, being a rabbi, but now you can be a rabbi to everyone
Yeah.
and you're able to break the ice through comedy.
Oh, yep. Exactly.
And now more than ever, it's got to be tough, right? Especially with now the war and everything. And I'm sure when you do podcasts now, they'll be asking that question and
Yeah.
how you're feeling and just kind of get people because a lot of people are in a very uh guess weird mood and
Yeah.
what's happening next.
Yeah.
What would you share with them to kind of keep them at peace with what's happening now?
Well, I mean, I learned from a Holocaust survivor that even during the Holocaust, there was humor, believe it or not.
Oh wow.
It wasn't laugh out loud, slap your knees humor. But
Right.
Gerda, her name was Gerda Klein. People might have heard of her. There was a documentary done about her life that won the Academy Award back in the 90s called One Survivor Remembers. Gerda was a very close friend of mine. I even had the honor to officiate at her funeral. She died at age 96. But Gerda told me that while she was a slave laborer, the teenage Jewish girls in her, where they slept at night, would write and put on plays, and most of them mocked their captors, and it was a relief to them. It didn't change things though. It was a horrific situation, but there was even humor during that time of horror. I mean, she survived a death march of 4,000 Jewish girls, of whom 200 survived. Um, but even now, there's humor as a diversion. The story of an air raid in Tel Aviv, and people are running from their apartments or their houses to the shelter, and an elderly man turned back, and his wife said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I forgot my dentures." She said, "What do you think they're dropping? Sandwiches?" So
Wow.
Now, but see, that's the part of it, right? The part of it keeping it. So, Sherry, that's the thing of why we had the rabbi on the podcast today is to kind of get some light humor after we've been really
Yeah.
going through some tough
Perfect
times in
timing.
2026.
yeah,
It was perfect timing.
well, that's
So, we
timing is
appreciate you
timing is
doing that.
everything.
Yeah, timing's everything. Well, God has humor. God laughs. He made us in his image and he laughs. And, I know sometimes he laughs at me and, shakes his head and said, okay, Sherry, let's do it again. Let's try it again. But he's got a sense of humor. And now you've got a program called The Spirituality of Laughter. What is that?
That's a lecture. When I do a scholar in residence weekend, I'll be doing one in Long Beach, California in a few weeks, where on Friday night I give a sermon, on Saturday night I do stand-up comedy, and then Sunday I do this lecture on the spirituality of laughter, which talks about humor, the importance of humor, the roots, Jewish roots, about why Presbyterians are not funny. That's that's one of the things I talk about. That's a high point. I talk about Muslims and humor, all kinds of religions, and the value and the importance of humor, and what it really does for us throughout the ages and now, biblically during difficult times, and then um, how it keeps us going, sustains us. Uh, I'll
Yeah.
be happy to talk about Presbyterians and Muslims if you want. I can. I mean, I did a doctoral program at Princeton Theological Seminary. We met every week for 2 years, and then did our projects. There were 8 ministers, 2 priests, and me. I was the first Jew ever in the program. And the first day, we're all sitting there, a little bit nervous. And
Yeah.
the director of the program was a tall Presbyterian minister, faculty member of Princeton Seminary, with a deep voice, rather intimidating he was. The Reverend Dr. J. Randall Nichols was his name. And one of the first things he said was, Presbyterians are not funny. Okay, we're taking notes. What's he getting to? So the first case study was presented by one of the ministers about a woman in his congregation who was making his life absolutely miserable. And he finished, and then the Reverend Dr. J. Randall Nichols looked down. He said, yes, she's the kind of person that you want to kill her and then tell God she died. so so we knew he was pulling our legs too. Um, so I talk about Christian sense of humor and then Muslim sense of humor. I've done hundreds of shows with Muslim comedians, and I could tell you there's a lot of very good Muslim comedians out there. Have you ever heard of Mo Amer? The
No.
No.
he's a Palestinian who had a Netflix a series called Mo. It went through
Oh,
two or three years. He also has Netflix specials. He's in a lot of movies. He's major. But Mo and I did about 50 shows together. And uh, I tell the story. One time we did a show at a synagogue in White Plains, New York, and we were driving back to our hotel. And Mo turned to me and said, Bob, I meant to ask you, it was Congregation Kol Ami. He said, what does Kol Ami mean? I said, well, it's Hebrew. It means voice of my people. He said, oh, because in Arabic it means eat my uncle.
Oh, oh, okay.
all right.
All
So
right.
Sherry, any other questions? This is very intriguing how he uses laughter and faith to help people.
Yeah, and he seems to really enjoy it. I do have one question because I think it's pretty impressive. Is you were recognized as the honorary comedic advisor to the Pope.
Right, right.
Wow,
Yeah.
awesome.
Here's what happened. Uh, in 2015, the Pope came to America, Pope Francis, and Jimmy Fallon announced that he was going to hold a joke with the Pope contest, that asking people to send in videos of them telling a joke they think the Pope would like. And then Jimmy told his joke. And then on the website, they had jokes told by Cardinal Dolan and Brooke Shields, Bill Murray, Al Roker, a lot of celebrities. And they had 4,000 entries from 47 countries. And I won. I'm the honorary comedic advisor to the Pope.
Wow,
Wow.
that's
So
impressive.
I even have a certificate on my wall. They gave a party for me and got tickets to the Tonight Show. And I'll tell you the joke that I that won. And first,
Okay.
I had no intention of entering, but a friend of mine in town, she saw me when she said, "Bob, you're going to enter the Joke with Pope contest, aren't you?" I said, "No, I don't do contests, Rosalie." And then 2 weeks later, with the farmers market, she comes up, "Bob, the deadline's Tuesday. Have you entered the?" I said, "Now you're really annoying me, Rosalie," and we left. You know, and then I got home and I had time to kill, so I put a joke on tape and I sent it in. And a week later, I got a call. You won. So the joke goes like this. It's very simple. It's my wife and I have been married. Now it's 56 years. Married for 56 years. Our lives are totally in sync. For example, at the same time I got hearing aids, she stopped mumbling. And that's the one that won. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Look
And I
at
got
you.
publicity, I mean, all over the world. And a South African cartoon news program did a 2.5 minute bit on the rabbi who won the Joke with the Pope contest. German papers, Norwegian papers, all over the world, PBS. Good time.
Wow. Good time to have by all.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sherry, best place we can find it for on you, Rabbi. Where can we find info? Where's the best place?
I can, Sherry, have it, or I can do it.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no,
No,
you.
my website is bobalper.com. It's BOBALPER.com. And there's a lot of video on there that we shot at the villages in Florida. Did a huge theater down in the villages. That's what's on the website, and comments from people like Norman Lear, which is nice, um, and booking information. So it's Bob Alpert. People think our name is Alpert, like the trumpet player. It used to be Alpert, but we dropped the T at a party in Boston. So it's so it's bobalper.com. And the other thing is, if you go on YouTube and put the name Rabbi Bob Alper, Rabbi Comedian Bob, anything, there's about 70 or 80 clips on YouTube that people can watch. And, some of them are even funny.
And
Oh,
clean. If you
Yeah,
want clean comedy, you're the person to go see.
right, right. You know,
Yeah.
I do. I've always wanted to do a show called Jokes I Can't Tell on the Stage,
Oh, cool.
because there are plenty of jokes I can't tell on stage, but um, and some, but my show it's a 70-minute show, 75-minute show, and I even end up by telling, I do maybe 60 minutes of stand up and then end by telling jokes, just not things that I've written, but just regular jokes. And the one I usually end with is about a couple who are celebrating their 65th birthday together. They were married, they were born around the same time, and a genie appeared. The genie said, "You've been lovely people. I'm going to grant each of you one wish." The wife said, "I've always dreamed of taking an around the world cruise." And poof, she had two tickets in her hand. Her husband said, "Well, as for me, I've always wanted to have a wife 30 years younger than I am." And poof, he was 95.
that was a
So
good one too. So some
Thank
great
you.
stuff. Appreciate it, Rabbi. And go to
Yeah,
storehousemediagroup.com for all things podcasting, publishing, movies, everything. Appreciate it, guys. That was a
thank
special
you.